Do you respect coyotes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why?
He's the trickster. He's so smart. I have laughed so hard at them over the years. I've seen so many things, especially from the air. We could talk for an hour the different scenarios that we have seen a coyote get into because we were chasing him. It can be incredibly hard to trap. The chink in a coyote's armor is his greed. He's just greedy. If there's like a roadkill, he'll go. I've sat there and watched this. He'll go over there and just gorge, and then he'll run out there about 200 yards and just throw it all up into a pile, and run back and do it again, and throw up in another spot, just so nobody else gets it. So he's got enough, and that's kind of his chink in the armor.
These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. SIG is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com. Besides mice in your pantry or something like that, what would be the best animal for somebody getting into trapping to go after?
Muskrats.
I think so too.
Muskrats. That's how I started.
That's how a lot of people start.
Everybody I know that started trapping when they were a kid, everybody started on muskrats. You kind of fought over the sloughs. I mean, in school it was like, that's my canal or my drainage, stay out of it type of
like
deal.
little turf wars.
It's my turf war.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're in places, they're quite numerous. In places that have dikes or ponds, muskrats can be quite destructive.
Are their populations threatened at all? Like, is there a concern that we might trap too many muskrats and that muskrats would go extinct?
No, never. Usually what controls the muskrat populations is the fur price. If the fur price gets up there, everybody chases them. When they bottom out, nobody does it for a while.
What's muskrat fur good for?
It's great for, muskrat coat is gorgeous. Muskrat fur along a collar is amazing. They're used for liners inside hats and stuff. They're used a lot to dye. They'll dye them, and it's just a very dense fur. Nothing like as much as, say, mink per se, but it's a neat fur. And the thing about them is they're readily available.
Very soft.
Very soft. And there's guys out there that, Midwest, back towards the east, man, they take a lot of muskrats.
And muskrats, do you have any idea what a muskrat pelt is worth these days?
I believe after this last year, muskrats were probably the most valuable fur out there. Coyote pelts had just bottomed out. I don't think beaver was worth much. But I think a muskrat was $6 to $8 per se.
Okay.
On good ones.
And then how much would a trap cost to catch a muskrat in?
Man, it's been a long time since I've looked at a lot, like a muskrat trap. But I'm going to say, I'm going to take a guess here. I'm going to say $10, $15. Okay. So you catch 3 rats, you've paid for your trap.
Okay. So 3 muskrats into it.
Yes.
And we're showing a profit on our trap. But that's not the only thing you need to trap a muskrat. You don't just need a trap. What else do you need to trap a muskrat?
Man, That's about all you need for rats. Because if you got the right place, you can cut a willow. You can run that willow down through that ring on the end of the chain. There's a chain that comes off of your trap, and it's about 12, 14 inches long. And there's a ring there about as big as a silver dollar. And you can just cut a willow, set your trap, shove that willow down through there, put you a slice of apple, old apple that, left in the cellar. Underneath that pan, you're golden.
So you put the slice of apple underneath the pan.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pan?
So you'll have a set of jaws. Those open up, and you'll have what is called a dog. The dog is a little metal lever that goes over one side of that jaw, and then the pan is a device that is hooked to your dog, and it's just like a trigger, basically.
So the pan is the thing they step on.
They step on. Yep.
And then the jaws are the round things that close, that hold their legs so that they can't get away.
Hence leg hold trap. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. But if you put it underneath the pan, how can the pan depress?
You just make sure that pan is going to set above your base plate, which is your frame underneath. It's going to set 3/4 of an inch off your base plate.
So just a little tiny bit of apple.
Yeah, just as like a Ritz cracker size.
Okay.
Thickness.
So one apple can bait quite a few traps.
Oh yeah.
Why in the world do muskrats like apples? That doesn't seem like something that would be very common in their environment.
One, especially in the fall or winter, those apples, they're sweet, incredibly sweet. An old cooking apple or stuff that's a person may throw out or juice. They're sweet, and that muskrat. He's eating roots. He's eating watercress. He's eating especially the roots of tules, cattails. They'll dig all over through those banks and get that. And so, a slice of sweet apple. Holy smokes! Yeah,
I've heard about carrots for muskrats.
Yeah, carrots. But the thing with the carrot is it's a lot smaller. An apple slice you can set, and it sets under there really nicely. And they'll have to dig around. You can almost knock a piece of carrot out of there, and they can get to it with that apple. They kind of got to dig at it. So that's why I like apples.
Okay. So we took the ring that's on the end of the chain, and we shoved a willow down into the mud, and the ring can slide up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's why you want a fork in the top of your willow, because if you get a big rat or a mink and he bends that willow over, he can't pull that ring off and be gone. That way, your fork in your willow up there will stop that ring from sliding completely off.
Okay. Where do you set a muskrat trap?
You want to find your activity. It's nice to find drainage canals that don't freeze completely up in the winter. Those canals, if they've got some tules, cattails, water crescent, good banks of grass, you're gonna have muskrats. If the water is deep enough to where that muskrat can swim and go under the water for protection, you're gonna have muskrats. Look for a sign that little tunnels, little grass pads. Look for the banks in the fall when you're scouting. If you want to go out and scout, look for that water all muddied up, especially in the morning, because they're nocturnal. They like to work at night. Ponds that have tules are some of the best.
What's a tule?
A cattail, tule. So if you're not sure, just go out there in the evening and sit there and watch. And they're just they're about as big as a house cat, maybe a little bit smaller. They're kind of a football-shaped rat. They got a long, kind of a flat tail. And when you see them swimming, they basically just got their head up, and you'll see their tail just moving back and forth. And that's a muskrat.
Looks like a little tiny beaver, but without the beaver tail.
Yeah, exactly.
Skinnier tail.
Yeah. People in Western Oregon, in the western part of the states, maybe will mistake them with nutria,
right? Small
nutria, but they're look along the banks. That's where you'll find them.
Okay. So we're gonna just set our trap somewhere on the mud along the bank, a little slice of apple under it.
And you can do blind sets if you find those little pockets into the bank where the water's muddied up.
What's a blind set?
A blind set will be something with no bait, that the natural environment of that muskrat or animal moving back and forth is going to, with just him passing by, is going to put him in place to step into that trap.
Okay.
So if you've got a place where a muskrat is feeding into the bank, you can just set that right there. You'll probably have him by next morning. Those are just fresh digs. They will have runways to where if they're kind of getting into shallow water, they'll muck out that runway to where they can travel safe. Where they maybe the best place in those to set would be a blind set where they've got to come up on the bank. They like to come up on the bank and sit there and feed, chew, groom themselves. Those are good places too.
Okay. So let's say that I decided to go for it. I'm going to become a trapper. And I took the test and I got my trapping license and I bought some traps and I put my trapping number on my traps. And I went out and I caught, 20 muskrats and I paid for my 3 muskrat traps plus some. Got a little bit of change now. I'm going to reinvest in trapping. What's my next level up?
Next level up would be to mink, raccoon. They're fairly plentiful. Skill level, you just step up a little bit more. It takes a little bit more work per se. Mink are a lot fewer, but they travel a lot of distances. Raccoons are everywhere. They're not that hard to catch. They're harder to deal with. They're harder to skin. They're harder to flesh and put that hide up. A muskrat is probably one of the easiest things out there to skin and to put up. That's one of the nice things about starting with the muskrat. Mink are easy. One step up muskrat. Raccoon, they're so fat. They got so much fat on them at times.
Lots of grease.
A lot of grease, man. They just, them and badger. They take a lot of work, but they're another species. They're a lot of fun. They're a completely different animal, and you got to change what you're thinking on how to catch one.
And finding places to go trap can be a challenge for a lot of people. But if you've got something like a raccoon, there's a good chance that where a raccoon is going, it might be causing some problems. They can kill chickens. They, spread trash around. There's a lot of trouble that a raccoon can get into. So if you find a farm or a ranch and they've got a raccoon problem and you go in there and you responsibly catch some raccoons and you do a good job, then maybe you can go to that landowner again and be like, hey, would you mind if I, tried to trap something else? And they're probably going to, be friends to you forever at that point.
You can create a lifelong, not only a friendship, but a place to trap, a place on private ground to where you respect that landowner and they respect you for the job you're doing. Raccoons, fox, coyotes, especially if they got nutria, things like that. It does a great service to the private landowner, whether they're a farmer, rancher, or just a property owner. It's amazing how much damage a nutria or a raccoon can do.
We talked about it on Kate Havstad's podcast a few weeks ago about the importance of trapping to the western United States and what our country would look like if it hadn't been for trappers and for trapping. It would be incredibly different, but just the choice of fashion in Britain, the type of hat that they wanted to wear, being made out of beaver, that funded westward expansion in the United States. Without that, who knows what would have happened?
Without that fashion, chasing the beaver, we wouldn't have pushed to the west as hard as we did. That and gold. And so would France, had taken over the western United States as we know it.
England, Russia.
I mean,
Spain,
it goes on and on. I mean, if you look at the outposts and the trading posts, the trapping, it was huge on the West Coast up through Canada and stuff. So, yeah, a big rodent, changed history into how our country become into being.
How do you trap a beaver? I know this is something that you're passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I've trapped so many beaver. It's just like, eating wax. But
Eating wax?
yeah,
Is
it's
that
just,
something you're good at?
well,
Is that something people say? I've never heard that one.
it's just not enjoyable. I mean, there's nothing there. I mean, I don't get any kick out of trapping beaver. I like hunting beaver at night. Um, Controlling beaver in waterways at night, to me, that's fun. But what I really don't like is trapping beaver in the winter, like in December, January.
Because there's water involved, and that water's probably cold.
There's ice involved, and the water under the ice is insanely cold. And I'm not very good at it. There's guys that are just they love it, and I hate it. I'm not very good at it. And so let's just talk about start of trap season, November 15th, say, and you're on a river, and let's just take the Malheur River. Find your deepest water, slow water. They like that, and you got to have a good food source. Popular trees, willows. Those two are what really draw beaver. It's a great feed for them. The deeper and slower the water, the more beaver you're going to find. One, it gives them protection. Two, they don't have to fight a current going up against that stream, whether they run down and have to come back or they have to run up and then float down. So slow water, it conserves them a huge amount of energy and gives them a great amount of safety. So look at your sign. You're going to have slides. You're going to have willows that are chewed up. You're going to have trees that are tipped over, barked. You're going to have mud mounds that are pushed up, which are their scent mounds. And so those are the basic things you want to look for. And then you want to look for how fresh that sign is. And there's ways to tell what's old and what's not. The best, most effective beaver set out there with a leg hold trap is to make a set in about 4 to 6 inches of water on what we call a stair step. And so you just dig down and make a step where that beaver comes in and puts his front feet down the minute he gets that bank, because he's going to crawl up. And when he puts his front feet down, that should go right into that trap. Boom, you got him. That trap should be on a drowned set, which is a drowned line. It's a short chain, which the device will allow that chain to go down the line, but will not allow it to come back. And so obviously the beaver will head for deep water for safety, but with the correct set, that's his demise, because within seconds he realizes he can't come up. He's fighting the trap and he's out of air, and he'll drown within seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds at most, I would say.
Yeah. And look, what we're talking about is killing animals. Like that is what happens to animals and traps that you're trapping for fur or for removal. It's part of the game. Doing it as humanely as possible is very important. And that's important to every trapper that I know. Every single trapper that I know takes that more seriously than every non-trapper that I've ever met or anti-trapper that I've ever met could even conceive.
In my opinion, there's three things that the vast, 99% of the trappers out there. One is they want good numbers. Two, they want to take those animals as absolutely humanely as possible. And they want to put that fur up as absolutely best as they can. Putting up the best fur, and maybe at the first show getting that award, that number one, fur handling award, is quite coveted. And it's a sense of pride to say, look at this. This is mine. This is how I take care of fur. And the really good stuff, boy, it stands out.
Yeah. Coyotes are very available throughout the country for trapping, but it's hard. Coyotes require you to do things correctly.
And I'm going to say for the average trapper out there, start at muskrats. Your pinnacle, the top of that pinnacle is going to be coyotes. They are sharp, and the harder they're hunted and trapped, they learn. I can remember the first coyote I caught by accident. I was just thrilled to death, man. I thought I was a big man on campus. Well, the next set I made for him, I thought, okay, now I'm a coyote trapper. The next set I made, he dug it up, turned it upside down, sprung it, turned it upside down, and went to the bathroom on it. And that happened occasionally, and I almost completely considered.
That's offensive.
If it's saying that, it still
Personal.
bothers me today.
Personal.
I can still see that trap with that black turd sitting there. And so I almost thought, well, I'm never going to be a coyote trapper, but read the books, talk to friends, talk to a mentor. If you can get a mentor out there that has that experience, and I had a couple. My granddad on my mom's side, Grandpa Bill, he helped me catch our first beaver. There was an old boy that worked for the railroad. He taught us how to catch bobcat. And then there was a coyote trapper, Russell Zink in Juntura. He was a government trapper for a while, for some years, and then he was a longliner out in the desert, and he was very good. And he would throw you tidbits, and if you ignored those tidbits, didn't listen, you never got another one. But if you took him with respect and honored what he was giving you, and put it to work with hard work and respect on how you took care of your fur and property rights, the whole bit, next year he'd throw you another one and another one. Then he'd throw you, some years he might sit down with you for an evening and talk to you. And you'd come out of there with just a wealth, and your head kind of spinning. And I trapped coyotes till I was about 25, 27. Married, got too busy, put it away. Career change. Went to work for USDA Wildlife Services, government trapper. I thought I knew how to trap. And of course, where I trapped was 95%, work was coyotes. Man, I learned within a couple days that I didn't know anything. I really got schooled. And so you realize how much your eye can change, how much is still you need to learn. And anybody that thinks they know it all, they're done. They're not going to gain. If you learn and learn and learn, if you search it out and if you're passionate about it, man, you just can't. You'll never be good enough. You just keep learning.
Trapping coyotes is important. It's not just something that some folks do. Wildlife services around the West, around the country, from helicopters with poison, with traps, are killing tens of thousands of coyotes a year.
Yeah.
And if we talk about one adult coyote killing 20 or so fawns every year, and then we're talking about tens of thousands of coyotes getting killed, start thinking about these numbers and what would happen to other wildlife populations, to livestock populations, to pets, if that wasn't being done, if there weren't people out there working on this really hard. And then you've got all the recreational coyote hunters. You've got other hunters who are going out and shooting coyotes incidentally to whatever hunt that they're on. And then you've got people who are going out and trapping, either for fur or for whatever other reason that they're doing it. Maybe, they just work on a ranch or live on a ranch and they're trying to save some of their sheep or their calves or their deer or whatever. If it weren't for this massive underground effort, there would be a gigantic loss in our ecosystem. And that loss would be a gain for the coyote in the short term, but not in the long.
Not in the long. The role of the private trapper is so incredibly important. I've been both. I've been on both sides. As a private trapper, I still have my brand. It's, 1328X was my brand. And I've been on the government end. It's so important because the government end, they just can't cover it all. They just can't. And so you need these private, the private trapping industry, from muskrats all the way up to coyotes, to help manage. You've got to look at it as a managing tool. It's a managing tool for those species, for the numbers. You look at the number of fawns, like you said, that a single coyote may take during denning. Look at the coyotes, how they will set on a lek of sage grouse in the spring. and how they hammer on those numbers. You can just go on and on. I mean, when I started in Washington, is where I started my career with the government, out of Prosser, huge agricultural area, and so diverse. And I learned that coyotes will start eating asparagus in June when that comes on, and then I'm probably going to get the sequence wrong, but then they would hit the cherries, and then they would hit the grapes, and then the melons and corn somewhat, but there were so many apple orchards up there. They would go into the apple orchards in early fall and would live off of the apples until January. And all of a sudden, you got all this produce that supported all of these coyotes, and now it's all gone. Well, all these coyotes turn to lambs and calves that are just hitting the ground. And so that was quite an eye-opener to me, that a coyote could live off of asparagus and cherries and grapes and stuff. And talking to the vineyard guys, the amount of damage that just a single set of coyote pups in a vineyard will do on teething, on the irrigation lines, on their plastic irrigation lines, he says we are constantly trying to keep our lines running, repairing them constantly, just from the coyote pups that would chew on them as a chew toy.
Do you respect coyotes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why?
He's the trickster. He's so smart. I have laughed so hard at them over the years. I've seen so many things, especially from the air. We could talk for an hour the different scenarios that we have seen a coyote get into because we were chasing him. It can be incredibly hard to trap. The chink in a coyote's armor is his greed. He's just greedy. If there's like a roadkill, he'll go. I've sat there and watched this. He'll go over there and just gorge, and then he'll run out there about 200 yards and just throw it all up into a pile, and run back and do it again, and throw up in another spot, just so nobody else gets it. So he's got enough, and that's kind of his chink in the armor.
I was calling one in Montana one time during deer season. We saw this coyote way out on a sagebrush flat, about 1,000 yards out, and I just squeaked at him with my lips, something like that. And he picked his head up and started running towards us. And at 600 yards, he stopped, froze, jumped sideways, landed in a sagebrush, and caught a baby jackrabbit, and he tipped his head back and he ate that thing. I thought, well, this is over with. He's obviously full now. But I squeaked at him, and he picked his head up and ran right towards us again. Greedy.
So greedy.
It cost him, too. Cost him everything.
Yeah.
Wasn't worth it.
We were come on to one in the fixed wing, the Super Cub one day, and it was out in some crust wheat flat, late winter. And it's those things you laugh about. He's out there and he's just trotting along and he sees us and, I think the guy that did Wile E. Coyote on the Roadrunner was a seriously coyote hunter because he knew some coyote behavior. But anyway, we come in towards this guy and he sees us and he takes off running as hard as he can. And we're coming in and like 5 seconds before we get there, we're getting close. This jackrabbit goes flying across his pathway, and everything, the Super Cub that's on his tail, that's about to be his demise, completely forgot all about that. He went into that chase mode. He put his legs down into a hard 90-degree, and he takes about 4 hard lunges and then realizes, oh yeah, there's a Super Cub on my tail. And you could just see those yellow eyes just go so big, like, oh no, I screwed up. that greed, oh my gosh.
They cost you.
They cost you. I've seen him jump into sagebrush, run him from his heart, and jump into it, and they will bust up a covey of chukar, and they will completely forget we're there, and he'll just start jumping through the air trying to catch chukar. And then it's like, yeah, there's a Super Cub.
Interesting. Is the dirt hole set the standard for coyotes? Is that the baseline?
It's kind of what everybody uses. I don't, simply because everybody uses it, but it's a good place to start. Don't ever throw it away. Use it. I mean, it's a nice, easy set. And I shouldn't say I don't use it. I do. I use it in a big version of what most people do. Most people have like a squirrel hole type of a deal or a gopher hole, and they have their dirt out there. And the thing about a dirt hole is you can just make it messy. That's a neat thing about it is you dig your hole, place your trap there, and if you got a dirt hole where something was digging, it should be messy. And so you've got this fresh dirt that you can bed your trap in, cover it up in, and it looks like something dug there. And I just make mine really big, like somebody got in there with a backhoe. Mine are quite obvious. So.
And do you do that so that they can see it from farther away?
It's an attraction. If the wind is going the wrong way, because up in that hole you'll put your bait. And so if the wind's going the wrong way, if that coyote does not pick up the scent of that bait, the dirt will grab his attention. They'll stick their nose in just about every fresh badger hole that they come or by, and some that they don't. To get a good idea what a coyote's doing, follow him into fresh snow before the ground's frozen, and you'll see where squirrels or badger or something was out there digging, and man, you'll see this guy just lock onto that and just go trotting over there. And you'll see tracks on there, stick his nose in there. He might dig a little bit, he might play around there and then move on. The nice thing about a dirt hole set is if you dig it down a ways, when you get into those first freezes of winter coming on, if you've got a good deep hole and you have kind of a stair step there, if you place that trap down there, it's below that freezing level. You'll get you'll get some extra time before you got to start dealing with frozen ground and trapping in frozen conditions, freeze thaw. If you can get that 4, 5, 6 inches down, it makes a huge difference. And then if you have your hole dug even deeper, that warmth of that ground will fill that hole. You'll get a couple extra weeks out of good trapping in late fall, early winter.
So the aspect is really important for that. If you're looking for extra warmth, do you want it facing south?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You get into that time of year, all my stuff. You'll get so much extra time with your traps working facing that south ground. It just warms everything up faster, sooner. Sun hits it first thing, last thing type of deal.
So in Idaho, in Montana, you can trap wolves. Wyoming, can you trap wolves in Wyoming?
Yes.
And as wolf populations expand to other states, and there becomes a requirement to control those wolf populations, trapping is the best tool to do that, and that's been meted out scientifically over these past 30 years that wolves have been back in the lower 48. Trappers are much more effective than hunters. It's just how it is. So for those who want to travel to those states to trap or live in those states and want to try trapping wolves, what is the difference between trapping a coyote and trapping a wolf?
Whew. Night and day.
Really?
The thing about trapping a coyote is, you find that food source. Let's say you find that apple orchard that they're coming into, and I've seen paths just beat down muddy in the snow of coyotes going into an apple orchard from the backside out of the sagebrush. Man, there's your gold mine right there. You can trap on that, snare on that for weeks. They live in a fairly small area, and if they have a good food source, they're within a mile or two, or 4 or 5, and so they're right there. A wolf, he might travel 20 miles, 30 miles in a night just to get somewhere to kill or move on a ridgeline, or 100 miles multiple times. The toughest thing about trapping wolves is just trying to get in front of them. Most of the guys that trap do it in the winter, during season, obviously, and so those wolves are congregated down onto the winter grounds, to where the elk and the moose are, elk, moose, and deer. And so even though they're consolidated down into those areas more, they still travel a huge amount of ground. And wolves, I've seen wolves push through shoulder deep snow all day long. Doesn't bother them a bit. If it gets frozen or wind-blown ridges, they'll go for miles. And I don't mean 3 or 4 miles. They'll go for 30, 40 miles. And so to get in front of them takes a huge amount of work. I mean, you're fighting the elements. If you're trapping wolves in the winter, you're dealing with snow and a lot of snow. And so are you going to do it on a snow machine? Are you going to do it on a tracked vehicle? Are you going to try and do it on the edges of the snow where wolves may be coming in, which aren't big numbers? I was given some statistics a month ago. I believe that 90% of the wolves that are tagged in Idaho are taken by incidental incidents, by just a hunter that has a tag that runs into a wolf when he was hunting deer or elk.
Yeah.
10% is taken by those guys that really know how to do it. And there's not a lot of them. There's a couple of guys in the northern part of the state of Idaho that are very good at it. Those guys will tag 10, however many they can, 10, 20, whatever. But you can count those guys on one hand.
Yeah, and if you want a resource for that, you can check out the podcast I did with Stuck in the Rut, and they have a wolf hunting school that they offer that's online if you're interested in doing that. So one of the struggles I've had in trapping in the snow is that snow continues to accumulate.
Yeah.
And suddenly, if your trap's under 6 inches of snow, it's useless. It has to be underneath the exact perfect amount of snow.
Yes.
And it can't melt.
It can't melt,
and it can't snow more.
Yep. That's why, to quiz or to ask, say, supposedly somebody that knows what they're talking about on winter condition trapping, I'm not that guy. If I'm trapping in the winter, when I was trapping wolves or coyotes, whatever I needed to, I found the biggest fir tree I could, and I sat underneath that, and that's your best bet. I've tried to monitor and keep equipment working in those snow conditions, and man, you better not have a second job because you're not going to have time to do it. It is time consuming. It takes a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of patience of not getting frustrated and just jerking all your stuff and going home and watching football.
And a lot of money.
A lot of money. I mean, I know a kid that he traps hard and he loves trapping coyotes. He traps just about everything out there, but he goes hard at coyotes in the fall. And he went at it hard last year, really hard. And he always does well, and we're talking hundreds of coyotes. And gas went up and up and up, and people were talking, coyotes at $60, $75. And through the whole fall into early winter, he's thinking, I can make this work. Well, guess what? The best price he was offered was $25 a pelt. He lost so much money, making a run at that. And so that's tough. That's really hard to do that.
And a lot of the drop in fur prices is because a lot of the fur buyers are Russian, and they're in a war right now.
Yeah,
and
that just changed everything.
Import-export tariffs and blockages and all kinds of things. So Russia's not buying fur, so that tanks the global fur economy.
On coyotes. Coyote is the one. France, they take the bobcats. France and Germany take the bobcats, the fancy stuff for garments. Russia takes it for
survival.
Didn't really want to say that, but those fur collars and that fur coat, lined fur. Yeah.
Okay, so we find ourselves a big Doug fir tree, and that's gonna basically block snow from getting down to the base of it. So it's a place that we can remain consistent. You've got to be a freak about scent control, probably.
Yeah. I mean,
or do you just give up?
No, don't ever give up. You mean give up on trying to control your scent?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you got to be smart about it. I mean, I've got gloves that I use for trapping. I got a pad that I throw down to kneel on. I chewed Copenhagen for 50 years, and you don't spit. When you go to make that set,
drives me bonkers.
It's one of the toughest things I dealt with. I would actually pack a Gatorade bottle so I could spit with when I was making a set. How stupid is that?
Well, I see people spit at game cameras and, you know, it's just crazy. You're leaving a package of scent out
Yes,
there.
yes.
Don't do that.
Wolves are so incredible with their ability to smell. I've seen wolves come down a trail, sticking their nose in every track I made, and look up at me and go, "Oh, that's you." This is how. It's kind of a long story. This is how bad it got for me because I was the gunner out of the helicopter in Idaho, and we covered a lot of country, and obviously we covered all of my trapping country, which was that southwest corner, that McCall, Cascade, Idaho City country. And so when I first went to work there, I had some great success in trapping wolves, and we had this Hughes 500 helicopter that we got very good at. We started collaring, and we started doing a lot of aerial work in the winter, and in the places where we could land and take a DNA sample on the ones we took. You land, you might wallow out through there waist deep in snow or whatever, but you land, usually go to the bathroom, you take a chew of Copenhagen, and you go out there and you get to your animal and you take a sample, you take a tooth, and you go back and you chit-chat for a while and you fire it up and you go. Well, all the animals that we did not, say, take or that are in that area will later come back and smell that wolf. They will see what happened to that wolf. They're not just curious. It's part of that pack, and so it bothers them. And so they will come back and
So they're investigating.
they're investigating big time. And guess what? Guess who they smell when they get there? It is me. It is that guy. And so that transferred from winter, doing all of that in all of that region, to my trapping in the summer. And it got so bad that they knew the smell of my dogs. So any place I took my dog, they would just pick up and leave. They knew the smell of me. I had one pack that they were close to the sheep. And when I got there, I had all these tracks and all these dust trails. I thought, well, easy. I set 4 very, very good sets that evening. And I knew in that morning I was going to have a wolf. And all I wanted to do was put a collar on. Not a fresh track anywhere. I ran those traps for 4 days. They completely disappeared. It took me 7 or 8 days to find them again. The minute I got in on top of them, I set traps. They were, the minute they smelled me, they picked up and moved again. And they had, pups that were moving. This was, August time, and so those pups were very mobile. And then it took me 2 weeks to find them again. And every time I would get close, they would pick up and leave. They knew who I was. They did not like me. It really bothered them on who I was. And so that tells you what they imprint in their head on who you are. I know guys in Canada, and I'm sure northern Idaho, Montana, but I've talked to guys in Canada and Alaska that they work all summer to find that pack and to know where that pack is going to be and where they're going to winter. And they will go in and set up their equipment where they want. And they may set 50, 100, 150 snares. And then in Canada, you can bait. And I think in Alaska, you can too. So they would, once those wolves got down into the winter ground, they would haul that bait in. They would set their equipment in June, July, and never go back. Then they would haul that bait in. And their whole intention was to take absolutely as many as you could, because after that, you didn't have a chance. They would know who you are and what you were about, and you would never get a crack at them again, hardly. And that's what made my job so tough. I wasn't out there taking numbers. I was out there trying to take specific animals because they were killing. They were causing damage, and some were causing a lot of damage. And so to target a certain one that knows you, man, that gets tough. I mean, I got one wolf that I chased for 4 years. I finally got him because he made a mistake, because I made him mad, but he made a mistake. But it took me 4 years. I had him on game cams. The archery hunters knew him. The sheepmen knew him very well. But it took me 4 years because He knew me. He every time I'd come at him, he'd adjust. They're tough. They're very tough. To me, it's the pinnacle. I always thought, you catch a coyote, you catch a sheep killing 10-year-old coyote, man, that's the best. No, to me, it's not even close. It's not even close to catching a wolf that has been hunted and trapped at and shot at and called at. They get incredibly intelligent on how to dodge you.
What's one tip that you'll give us for wolf trapping that you'll leave us with?
Be prepared to do a lot of work. There's those that get lucky, but if you want to trap wolves, you had better be prepared to put a lot of effort into it. And I don't mean going out in a weekend type of a deal here, going out and setting half a dozen traps. Yeah, you might get lucky, but if you want to take wolves, it's going to take a lot of work. One of the best quotes I heard was a good wolf trapper out of Montana. He says, well, how do you take so many wolves? He says, I trap the dumb ones and I move on. So that's probably the best advice. Go into an area that they don't know you. You've got decent numbers. And go at it hard. Study it. Never quit learning. But it's going to take a lot of work.
And it all starts with a muskrat.
I was going to say, yeah, it starts with the muskrats. Yeah. You know, it was interesting. I can't remember the kid's name from your country, Olawa, the kid that traps and that runs through the forest in tennis shoes, which I like that idea. I'd never done it, but I thought, yeah, I like that. Of all the trapping he does, he loved the muskrats because there's action there. And I think that's where a person has to start, because there's that reward of, I'm going to set my trap, I'm going to hunt, I'm going to search, I'm going to track, set my trap, boom, I got one. There's so many guys that goes, well, I'm going to trap wolves. They'll buy 24 traps, which are very expensive. You know, I'm going to tear my pickup up. I'm going to be gone 4 days out of the week, in the nights or whatever, and then never do it again. I know one guy, he worked 3 years in the backcountry. He finally caught his first one here a year ago. But he never gave up. And then he caught that one. He's ruined for life, you know. He'll never quit. It's a passion. You got to, it's something that can take over. It can be a passion for life. And what it is, it's the greatest thing in the world. It has nothing to do with killing, stacking up numbers. It has nothing to do about that. It's that challenge. You know, we all love a challenge. And if you love the outdoors and you love to hunt, and you love to track, you love to try and outwit something, match your skill against theirs. You know, that kid that starts with muskrats. I know I've set some kids on that track 20, 30 years ago. They're good coyote trappers today. They live for coyote season, for fall, for winter.
Trapping's a cool thing.
It is.
You learn a lot about yourself, and you know, if you're a kid growing up in the wild somewhere, it could be your first business.
Absolutely. I bought my first pickup off of fur money, you know. Probably bought my first 6-pack of beer off of fur money. Made some great friendships, lifelong, with dear people through trapping. There's some outlaws, you know. There's outlaws in everything you do, run into, but it's great. And I should probably say, patience. You know, patience. There was a guy that his name was Ricky Walker, and he's from Mississippi, and we were doing a project together. And he was the neatest guy. You just thought he was this country bumpkin in a pair of bibs. He was so intelligent. And he says, you know, that stuff in that pink bottle called patience. He says, don't ever throw that away. Always use your patience. And don't get discouraged. So many times you can get discouraged with trapping, whether it's weather or the animals outsmarting you.
I do. I'm always so hopeful and so optimistic. I set a trap and I think, this is going to work like instantly. This is so good. This is a piece of art. And then I come back and there's nothing in it. And I think, well, you know what? That's all right. I'm going to get them tomorrow. This next trap, though, this next one I'm going to check.
Can't miss. It's a done deal.
Dude, it was perfect when I put it in there.
And then he digs it up, turns it upside down,
Yeah.
takes a dump on
crap
it.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is like this crazy wave of optimism and disappointment, and then eventually it's like, oh my God, it worked.
My biggest
I
disappointments
caught something.
are when I didn't go that extra mile. I was too lazy or tired or whatever. I remember I set this lion trap. This lion sat, and this lion was killing sheep, and it was August, and I was on a south slope underneath the rim, just cooked to death. Thirsty, couldn't spit, and it was so rocky there really wasn't any place to make a set except up against this old stump, and I had to chip down through the rock and chip down to get a bed, and I didn't get it where I wanted, and I looked at that and I thought, I should change that. And then I thought about the water down the bottom of the canyon at my bike, and I made the choice to go to the water, and I come back 2 days later, and I'd caught him. But if I'd moved the trap to where I should have, I'd had it too far in because there was a little pocket there, and so I chipped the rock out. But if I'd have chipped all the rock out and got it out at the right distance, I'd have caught him full, but I didn't. I nicked him, and he went up the juniper tree and popped out. And I honestly don't know if I ever killed that lion later because I had one crack at him and I messed it up. And that sheep man lost some sheep because I was being lazy, or didn't go that extra mile. I knew I should have done that, and I didn't. And there's times with wolves that killing's going on, and I have gone that extra mile instead of 4 sets. I've crawled down in that hole and I've put 2 extra sets, and you walk down in there, and on that very last set, that one you really gutted it out to get in there, that's where he's at. That's where you get him. I've set up on kills, and for me to set up and call for 45 minutes for coyotes, that's max. I'm usually a 30-minute guy or maybe even a 20-minute guy, and I got to move on. And I set up on this kill, couldn't see it. It was down in the trees. And an hour later, I got down there before daylight. An hour later, I thought, I got to go set traps. No, wait. 2 hours later, no, wait. There's something not right. Something's going to happen. 3 hours and 50 minutes later, that wolf gave me about a split second as he passed through the trees, and I got him. And that stopped the killing on that mountain for 3 years. So, wow. Little things like that. Don't give up. That patience.
And you can apply that to everything that you do.
Everything. It is not just trapping. It is everything.
Yeah.
And
that's why doing stuff like this, especially as a young person, is important, because the skills that you learn with patience and persistence and perseverance, like if you learn those when you're young, you'll carry them on as an adult. And how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
So, and then if you're an adult or you're a teenager and you want to get into trapping, you know what? Go buy a muskrat trap and an apple. Find yourself a waterway that's got a muskrat and get after it.
There's books out there. I mean, all you got to do with Google, just Google muskrat trapping.
Yeah.
Craig O'Gorman is a great source of knowledge and literature, books. There's probably more muskrat trapping books out there than a guy can count. And what you said about learning, persevering, hard work, I can tell you there's times when I caught muskrats and was packing them home, and the hands so cold you were crying, and but when you built that fire and you got to skin those rats and you go to that fur sale, and some old sourdough guy, comes up there and says, "Nice job, boys. Those are some nice rats." That's pretty sweet. That's what brings you back the next year, and that's what makes you buy more traps and more stretchers and more. Then you start making your lures and buying lures and reading up on it and talking to people. And if a muskrat's this big, look at that beaver. Ooh, there's got to be some money in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing some of your stories and your wisdom and experience. And, we're living in different times because there's fewer trappers in North America probably than there's ever been. And it's something that needs to continue on. And what trappers have done a lot is to not talk about it. And it's going to die with a generation unless we talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. And I'm glad that you're willing to as well.
I through my whole career, you work hard, and so you hold it close to your chest. You hold those cards close on how and why you've been maybe successful. And you don't want to give that up because there are people that will abuse it. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to earn it. But now I've gotten to an age where, like you said, it's a dying art, and it's a tool that so needs to be out there and used and utilized. And I have probably shared more knowledge in the past couple of years than I have the rest of my life with people, young and old, because...
For which I'm personally grateful.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
That was good. That was fun.
I'm working on building a house this year, which is something that I know nothing about. And I love that. It's exciting. Everything is a new challenge, and there's lots of challenges that pop up. The other day, we were laying out rebar and getting ready to pour concrete for the foundation of the shop that's going to be next to the house. And one of the guys that was there that was helping, one of the construction crewmen, I looked over and he had a Stanley thermos sitting on the end of the trailer. I said, "How do you like that thing?" And he goes, "Oh, I love it. I've had it for a decade." It's like, if you find any environment where people are out there working hard with their hands outside, no matter the conditions, you're probably going to see a Stanley product there. It's something that just goes with that blue collar labor, because that's what this product is doing. It is out there working just as hard as you are. It's going to be there as long as you are. It's going to be there after you're done. It's something that I feel passionate about with every piece of gear that I take either into the woods or into the workplace. Like, it's got to be able to outwork me, and I work really hard myself. If you are also a hard worker, and I'm sure that you are, then you could probably appreciate the same type of gear. If you go to stanley1913.com and you use the discount code 6RANCH, that's the number 6 and the word ranch, you can get 25% off just about any of their products. And I encourage you to do that. They're a great supporter of this show and great supporter of this audience. Again, I love you guys, and I just want to pass this discount and the savings on to you. If you want something from Stanley, I encourage you to get it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share the show with a friend. You can also rate the podcast and leave a review. Your support allows me to keep doing what I love, which is meeting incredible folks and sharing their stories with you. For more content and photos, follow the show on Instagram at 6Ranch Podcast or me at 6Ranch Outfitters. This episode was produced by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the 6Ranch Podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Christofferson. Tune in every Monday for a brand new episode of the 6Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.